it makes sense that during the Industrial Revolution, when you had all of these innovations in machinery and transportation, communication, and agriculture and textile, that innovations would also occur in the field of science. And the Industrial Revolution's introduction of new technology and its impact sped up scientific understanding. In the late 1800s, new scientific ideas emerged that challenged long-standing conventional beliefs about the natural world. And a conflict did arise between the scientific community and religious communities at that time because some of these scientific theories were just very new and challenged some conventional and long-held beliefs. So, a summary of some of these ideas that came as a response to industrialism are as follows. So the first one we'll discuss is atomic theory. In the 1800s, John Dalton, an English Quaker schoolteacher, developed modern atomic theory, and it proved that tiny particles called atoms combine to create all chemical substances. Basically, he posited that all matter is made up of tiny particles called atoms, that all atoms of a given element are alike, but are different from the atoms of any other element, and that compounds are formed when atoms of different elements combine in fixed proportions. A chemical reaction involves an arrangement of atoms, not a change in the atoms themselves. Now, moving forward with this idea, in 1869, Russian chemist Dmitry Mendeleev created the table of elements, which grouped elements based on their atomic weight. This was the forerunner of the modern periodic table of elements that we see today. Archaeology and geology also expanded the scientific realm in terms of exploring the age of the Earth. So by the early 1800s, scientists posited evidence that the Earth was over 2 billion years old. They also asserted that life did not appear on Earth until many years after its creation. This led to new theories on dating the Earth and its fossils. So you can imagine that that also caused conflict between people with different belief systems. Natural selection also emerged during this time in the mid to late 1800s. So most of you might have heard of Charles Darwin. Natural selection is the process in nature by which only the organisms best adapted to their environment tend to survive and transmit their genetic characteristics in increasing numbers to succeed in succeeding generations, while those less adapted tend to be eliminated. So Charles Darwin wrote about this in his book that he published in 1859, The Origin of Species, and he was a British naturalist. This became known as the survival of the fittest, and that also extended to the human. And some people accepted the theory, others were opposed to it, mainly due to religious concerns. While the field of science has progressed over 200 years, many aspects of Darwin's theory have remained very important scientific studies, and then some have been proven incorrect, just as you go through the process of testing and retesting. So this graphic shows natural selection in a nutshell. It's all about trying to survive as a species. So you want to rotate out characteristics that do not aid in the survival of the species. So here you have a bird. They go after the green beetles, okay? So generations later, you're going to find out the green beetles are being kind of, they're being devolved. They're being, they're not as dominant. in beetles, that color, because it's not helping the species to survive. So you're seeing an influx of more brown beetles. Green beetles are basically exterminating. And then just over time, you just see that the brown beetle population have flourished. Green beetles have been selected out. So there are many examples of this in nature. Many examples. You can also see that in moths. Moths, before the Industrial Revolution, were lighter, and but then after the Industrial Revolution, when things became more polluted and darker, they were too easily caught. So they eventually mutated into a darker color. Not mutated, but evolved. So one thing about Darwin and his idea, which at this time was sort of revolutionary, is that some people took the idea meant for the natural world and extrapolated his ideas and applied them to society. And this became known as social Darwinism, even though Charles Darwin never supported or promoted these ideas. Basically, what people began to apply this to is race and social superiority and colonialism and things like that. They used it as a justification. It was never meant for that. So basically by the late 1800s, and probably bolstered by a lot of imperialistic success, many Europeans and Americans claimed that their successes indicated their overall superiority in the world. And Europeans also used these ideas to take over Africa, much of the Pacific Islands, and that included Australia. We'll cover that in upcoming lessons. Now, social Darwinism ushered in the age of nationalism and imperialism, which we will learn about in the future. So it's very important to note that Darwinism, or natural selection, survival of the fittest, is never meant to be applied in these realms. It's just another example of people taking scientific terms and theories and then misapplying them elsewhere. So that's about it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me.